This book is called 100 Facts on Space. We are not going to do 100 facts on space today. We're going to look at 5 facts on space. This book was written by Sue Becklake. If we look at the table of contents, I can show you which parts of the book that we're going to read. We will read the first part, Surrounded by Space, which starts on page 6, and the second part, Our Life-Giving Star, which starts on page 8. Surrounded by space. Space is all around the Earth, high above the air. Here on the Earth's surface, we are surrounded by air. If you go upward, up a mountain, or in an aircraft, the air grows thinner until there is none at all. This is where space begins. Space itself is mostly empty, but there are many exciting things out there, such as planets, stars, and galaxies. People who travel in space are called astronauts. Since this book is a nonfiction book, it has information in it, which are facts, and nonfiction books very many times, especially books that are about science or social studies, will contain captions like this that tell us more about the pictures. So this caption says, in space, astronauts wear spacesuits to go outside the space shuttle as it circles the Earth. Much farther away are planets, stars, and galaxies. This caption explains to us why this astronaut is wearing what he is wearing. Our life-giving star. The sun is our nearest star. It does not look like other stars because it is so much closer to us. Most stars are so far away, they look like points of light in the sky. The sun is not solid like the Earth, but is a giant ball of super hot gases, so hot that they glow like the flames of a bonfire. There's a caption right here, a label, that says prominence. Do you know what the word prominence means? Is that a word that we should look up? Nothing could live on Earth without the sun. Deep in its center, the sun is constantly making energy which keeps its gases hot and glowing. This energy works its way to the surface where it escapes as heat and light. Without it, Earth would be cold and dark with no life at all. There's another label which shows us a solar flare. The sun is often spotty. Sunspots appear on the surface, some wider than the Earth. They look dark because they are cooler than the rest of the sun. Solar flares, explosions of energy, suddenly shoot out from the sun. The sun also throws huge loops of gas called prominences out into space. So here's 2 labels that we've seen, prominence and solar flare. I can use something called context clues to figure out the meaning of both of these words. So I know that I saw these words and I didn't know what they meant. But then as I was reading, they came up in my reading. The first one that I saw was solar flares. After the word solar flares, it gives me a definition. Solar flares, explosions of energy suddenly shoot out from the sun. So now I know that a solar flare is an explosion of energy. So it shows me right here, solar flare, and it shows how this spot is a little bit lighter than all of the rest. And I think that's because this is the part right here that's the explosion of energy, so it's a different color than the rest. I don't know if you can see that, but it's just a little bit lighter. And then the other word that I didn't know was prominence, and I see that word in my reading too. So it says, the sun also throws huge loops of gas called prominences out into space. This time, the definition of my unknown word comes before the word. Huge loops of gas called prominences. So now I know that prominences are huge loops of gas, and I can look at the picture to see what that means. And I can see that coming out almost in a loop. A huge loop of gas as a prominence. Another thing that I see down here is sunspot. I may not have known what that word meant when I first started reading, but I can use context clues to figure out sunspots appear on the surface, some wider than the Earth. They look dark because they are cooler than the rest of the sun. Using context clues, I really have to take this apart because the explanation of it comes in more than one sentence. So it says that sunspots appear on the surface and some are wider than the Earth. So I can figure out that a sunspot is something that appears on the surface of the sun. They look dark, and it's something that looks dark because they are cooler than the rest of the sun. So then when I look at the picture, I can see right here that these are sunspots. Looking at the rest of the picture, I can identify other sunspots because now I know what they look like and I can see them throughout the picture. I can also identify other solar flares, probably these parts where everything looks lighter. And I can identify more prominences. So I look on the edge of the sun for these loops. Here's a prominence right here. So using my context clues and using pictures, I was able to figure out the definitions of these words without having to look them up on Google or using a dictionary, which are always great to use, but it is really good in your reading if you can figure those words out just by using the clues that the reading gives you. I also have a caption on the bottom of this page. The sun's hot, glowing gas is always on the move, bubbling up to the surface and sinking back down again. Fact number 5. When the moon hides the sun, there is an eclipse. Every so often, the sun, moon, and earth line up in space so that the moon comes directly between the earth and the sun. This stops the sunlight from reaching a small area on earth. This area grows dark and cold as if night has come early. Here's a caption. When the moon casts a shadow on the earth, there is an eclipse of the sun. When there is an eclipse, we can see the corona, glowing gas, around the sun. So here's a new word, corona, and it shows the definition right after this. So I know some of you who are listening to me read this are going to see corona and start to think about coronavirus. They have nothing to do with each other. It's just a coincidence. A corona, in this science sense, is just glowing gas that's around the sun. Another caption, warning, never look directly at the sun, especially through a telescope or binoculars. It is so bright, it will harm your eyes or even make you blind. So now I can look for more labels. I see right here the sun. I don't have to look that up. I know what the sun is. I see another label here for the moon, the shadow of the eclipse, and the earth. So this picture right here is showing me how an eclipse happens. I don't believe it. The surface of the sun is nearly 60 times hotter than boiling water. It is so hot that it would melt a spacecraft flying near it. Now that we've read these 5 facts about space, this has been a little explanation of how to use context clues within your reading.